Hello, friends. Did you know nearly 80% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you love horror stories, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps the channel grow and reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Story 1. The car that was already abandoned. At 3:12 a.m., I noticed the headlights first, steady, bright, pointed straight down the empty stretch of Highway 90. The engine was running, a low idle I could hear, even with my windows up. But there was no one inside the car. That didn't make sense. Not out there, not at that hour. I slowed my cruiser and pulled in behind it, tires crunching lightly on the gravel shoulder. The highway had been dead for the last 20 minutes. No passing trucks, no distant tail lights, nothing but open Texas land and that single vehicle sitting like it had been placed there. I remember thinking maybe the driver stepped off into the brush. People did that sometimes. Drunk, tired, or just not thinking straight. Still, something about it felt off. I keyed my radio. Dispatch. This is Unit 12. I've got a vehicle on the shoulder, eastbound Highway 90 near mile marker 214. Engines running, no visible occupant. There was a brief pause, long enough that I checked my radio to make sure it hadn't cut out. Then dispatch came back. Unit 12, confirm location. I repeated it, glancing at the mile marker sign just to be sure. The numbers reflected faintly in my headlights. Another pause. Longer this time. Unit 12, she said, slower now. That vehicle was reported abandoned 2 hours ago, near mile marker 193. I frowned. That's about 20 miles west, I said. Affirmative. I looked at the car again. Same Texas plates, slight dent on the rear bumper. Even from where I was sitting, I could see a fast food bag on the passenger seat. I remember thinking maybe dispatch got the report wrong, or maybe it had been towed and dumped again. It happens, rare, but not impossible. Copy that, I said. I'll check it out. I stepped out of my cruiser. The air felt colder than it had any right to be for that time of year. Not freezing, just enough to make me notice it. The engine of the abandoned car hummed steadily. No music, no movement inside. The headlights cut across the road in a clean, unmoving beam. I approached from the driver's side, one hand resting near my holster out of habit. "Hello?" I called out. No response. I leaned slightly, trying to see inside without putting my face right up to the glass. The seat was empty. Keys were still in the ignition. The dashboard lights were on. There was something ordinary about it. Too ordinary. I checked the back seat. Nothing. No bags, no movement, no sign anyone had been there recently except for that fast food wrapper. For a second I wondered if I had just missed them. Maybe they stepped off right before I pulled up, but I hadn't seen anyone. And there's not a lot of places to go out there, just flat land and low brush stretching for miles. I circled around to the rear of the car. The license plate matched what dispatch had on file. That's when I noticed something else. The driver's door. It was locked. I tested it once just to be sure. It didn't budge, which didn't line up with someone stepping out in a hurry. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. No wind, no insects, just the quiet hum of two engines, mine and the car's. It felt contained, like the sound wasn't traveling anywhere. I went back to my cruiser and got on the radio again. Dispatch, I've got visual confirmation. Vehicle matches the earlier report. But it's here, not where it was originally found. There was a soft crackle. Understood. Do you require backup? I hesitated. No, I said. I'll stay with the vehicle until we figure this out. I got back into my seat, leaving my headlights on. The abandoned car sat just ahead of me, unchanged. For a minute or two, nothing happened. I remember checking the time on my dash clock. 3:16 a.m. I leaned back slightly, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it had been moved. Maybe someone had driven it out here and left it again. But then, why report it abandoned earlier? And why leave the engine running twice? I rubbed my eyes and glanced up at the rearview mirror. That's when my stomach dropped. The road behind me had been empty. Completely empty. Now there was a car parked directly behind my cruiser, headlights off, engine silent. It hadn't been there before. I'm sure of that. I turned in my seat and looked back through the rear window. Same car, same dent on the bumper, same license plate. For a second, my brain tried to correct it, like maybe I was looking at the same car from a different angle, but that didn't make sense, because the original car was still in front of me. I snapped my head forward. It was gone. The shoulder ahead of me was empty. No headlights, no engine, no car, just darkness stretching down the highway. I felt this tight pressure in my chest, not panic, not exactly. Just a kind of forced awareness, like my body knew something before my mind caught up. I looked back in the mirror again. The car behind me hadn't moved. I sat there for a few seconds trying to think through it logically. Maybe I had pulled up behind the wrong vehicle. Maybe another car had come in behind me without me noticing. But I knew that wasn't true. There hadn't been any sound, no headlights passing, no indication of movement. And out there, you hear everything. I reached for the radio again. "Dispatch," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Can you confirm the status of that vehicle?" There was a pause, then, "Unit 12. The vehicle is still listed as abandoned at mile marker 193. I stared at the mirror, the car behind me, the one that had somehow replaced the one in front. It was exactly the same. "Negative," I said quietly. "It's behind me now." There was no response right away, just static. I didn't wait. I started the engine fully, put the cruiser in drive, and pulled forward slowly. Not fast, just enough to create distance. The headlights swept across the empty road ahead. I kept my eyes on the mirror. The car stayed where it was for a moment. Then, it turned on its headlights. No delay, no flicker, just instantly on. And then it started moving. Slow at first, matching my speed exactly. I pressed the accelerator a little more. It kept pace. No engine sound, no visible driver. Just those headlights holding steady behind me. I remember thinking, very clearly, that if I stopped, it would stop too. And I didn't want to find out what happened after that. So I kept driving. I didn't look back again after the next mile marker. I just focused on the road, on the center line, on keeping my hands steady on the wheel. Eventually, I saw distant lights ahead, a truck stop about 10 miles out. By the time I reached it, the road behind me was empty again. No car, no headlights, nothing. Later that morning, I filed the report. They checked traffic cams along that stretch. There was no record of any vehicle behind me. No second car. No movement matching what I described. The original abandoned vehicle. It was still logged at mile marker 193. Never moved. Never recovered. They even sent someone out to confirm. It was exactly where it had been reported hours earlier. Engine off. Cold. No sign it had been driven recently. I stayed on that route for another 6 months. Nothing like that ever happened again. But I started noticing something I hadn't before. Sometimes, late at night, I'd check my rearview mirror out of habit. And for just a second, I'd think I saw headlights. Not approaching, not passing, just there, keeping distance, matching my speed. And every time I looked again, there was nothing. Story 2. The gas station that wasn't on any map. At 3:04 a.m., my fuel light came on just as I passed a flickering gas station sign on the right side of Route 281. One of the overhead lights buzzed loudly, cutting in and out like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. I hadn't seen a station on this stretch in over 30 miles. That alone didn't make sense. I slowed down and checked my dashboard again, like maybe I'd misread it. The tank was low, lower than I was comfortable with. I didn't remember passing any exits or signs for fuel before that. For a second, I thought maybe it was closed, but the single working pump was lit. I pulled in. The gravel under my tires sounded loose and uneven, like the place hadn't been maintained in years. My headlights swept across the front of the building, small, rectangular, with dusty windows and a faded, open sign that glowed weakly in the corner. There were no other cars. I stepped out and immediately noticed how quiet it was. Not just empty, quiet in a way that felt contained, like the sound didn't travel beyond the edge of the lot. The pump looked older than anything I'd seen still in use. The display flickered when I lifted the nozzle, numbers resetting slowly like it was struggling to keep up. I remember thinking, at least it works. As I started fueling, I glanced toward the building. There was a man inside, standing behind the counter. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, facing the door. I couldn't see his face clearly through the glass, but I knew he was looking directly at me. Not casually, not like someone waiting for a customer, just fixed. I told myself it was normal. Small stations like this, especially overnight, the clerk usually just watches whoever pulls in. Still, something about how still he was made it hard to look away. The pump clicked off sooner than I expected. I checked the display. The amount didn't quite match what I thought I needed, but I figured maybe the tank wasn't as low as it seemed. I put the nozzle back and walked toward the entrance. The bell above the door didn't ring when I opened it. Inside, the air felt slightly warmer than outside, but stale, like it hadn't circulated in a while. The man was exactly where I'd seen him. Middle-aged, maybe. Plain clothes, no name tag. He didn't greet me, didn't nod, didn't move. For a moment, I thought maybe he hadn't noticed me come in, but his eyes were already on me. "Evening," I said. No response. I stepped up to the counter and placed a few bills down. "Pump 1. He looked down at the money, slowly, then back at me. Still no words. He reached out, took the cash, and opened the register. The drawer slid out with a dull mechanical sound that felt louder than it should have been. No change, no receipt. He just closed it and stepped back. I waited a second, expecting something else, a total, a nod, anything. Nothing. I told myself, he's just odd. That's all. It happens. I turned and walked out. The air outside felt colder than before. I got back into my cruiser, shut the door, and sat there for a second with my hands on the wheel. I don't know why I hesitated. Everything had gone fine. Strange, sure, but fine. Still, something in the back of my mind kept replaying how the guy had just stood there, watching. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. As soon as I was back on the road, I glanced at my GPS. It still showed the same stretch of highway. No gas station behind me. I zoomed out a little. Nothing. No marker. No business listing. No structure of any kind. I frowned and tapped the screen, thinking maybe it just hadn't updated. But even after refreshing it, the map showed empty land stretching for miles in both directions. I slowed slightly and checked my rearview mirror. The road behind me was dark, no lights, no sign of the station. For a second, I thought maybe I'd pulled into a side road or a private property not listed on GPS. But I hadn't turned. I was sure of that. I kept driving for another minute before reaching for the radio. "Dispatch, Unit 12. Can you confirm any active gas stations on Route 281 near my current location?" There was a short pause. "Unit 12, nearest listed station, is approximately 32 miles north of your position." I glanced at my dashboard. The fuel gauge hadn't moved. Still low, exactly where it had been before I stopped. I felt this slow, creeping unease settle in. "Negative," I said. I just refueled. Another pause. Can you confirm the location of the station? I looked ahead at the road. There was nothing there. No sign. No turnoff. Just empty highway. I can't, I said. Back at the station later that morning, I pulled the dashcam footage. I needed to see it again, just to make sure I hadn't missed something. The video showed everything clearly. The sign, the building, the pump, even the man inside, standing there, watching. The audio picked up the hum of the lights, the sound of gravel under my tires, even the click of the pump shutting off. It was all there, exactly how I remembered it. But when we pulled up satellite view of that exact location, there was nothing, no building, no road leading off the highway, just flat, empty land, undisturbed. They even sent someone out later that day to check. There were no tire tracks, no gravel, no evidence anything had ever been there. For a while, I tried to explain it. Outdated maps, temporary structure, maybe even some kind of setup that got removed overnight. But none of it held up, because of one detail I couldn't ignore. The receipt. I never got one. And my cash, it was still in my pocket, folded exactly the way I remembered placing it on the counter. I still work night shifts, still take long routes through empty highways, but I don't let my fuel drop below half anymore. Not because I'm worried about running out, but because I know if I ever see that station again, I probably won't have the choice to drive past it. Story 3. The radio call that came from his own unit. At 2:41 a.m., my radio crackled and a voice came through, clear and immediate. Unit 12, respond immediately. I was already driving, already on patrol, and I hadn't called anything in. For a second, I thought maybe dispatch was just assigning me something routine. A late-night disturbance, maybe a vehicle check. But something about the tone made me pause. It wasn't dispatch. It sounded like me. Not close, not similar, exact. I reached for the radio. Dispatch, Unit 12. Go ahead. There was a short delay. Then a different voice, our actual dispatcher, came through, steady and confused. Unit 12, we just received a call from your unit requesting immediate response. Can you confirm? I felt a slight pressure build behind my eyes, like my brain was trying to sort something too quickly. Negative, I said. I didn't transmit. There was a pause on the line. Copy that. Stand by. I glanced down at the radio panel, half expecting to see something wrong. Stuck button, interference, anything that could explain it. Everything looked normal. The road ahead stretched empty under my headlights. No cars, no movement. Just a long, straight piece of highway cutting through low fields and scattered fencing. I told myself it was probably a glitch. Radio overlap, maybe. Another unit transmitting on the same frequency. It happens. Still, I adjusted the volume slightly, like that might somehow make things clearer. Unit 12, dispatch came back. Slower now. We're pulling the transmission log. Copy. I kept driving. For the next minute or so, nothing happened, just the quiet hum of the engine and the faint static of the radio. I remember thinking I'd probably laugh about it later. Some weird technical issue, nothing more. Then the radio clicked again. Same voice. My voice. Unit 12, I need you to respond now. This time it was closer, more direct, and there was something underneath it. Not urgency exactly, but pressure. Like whoever was speaking expected an answer. I didn't respond right away, I just listened. The transmission ended with a soft burst of static. I swallowed and keyed the mic. Dispatch, did you copy that? A beat. Yes, she said. We received it. Is that coming from me again? Another pause. Affirmative. I felt my grip tighten slightly on the wheel. "That's not possible," I said, more to myself than to her. "Unit 12, she replied carefully. "We're showing your unit ID as the source of both transmissions." I checked the radio again. The button wasn't stuck. There was no sign it had been keyed without me noticing. "I haven't touched the mic," I said. "I understand." The way she said it told me she didn't. Or maybe she did, and that was worse. I slowed slightly, scanning the road out of habit more than anything. Still nothing ahead. I started thinking through possibilities. Maybe someone was using my unit ID. Maybe a signal relay issue. Something technical I didn't fully understand. But that didn't explain the voice. "Dispatch," I said. "Can you play back the transmission?" There was a short delay. "Stand by." The radio went quiet again. I drove another half-mile, passing an old cattle gate and a stretch of fence I recognized from earlier in the shift. Same route, same landmarks, everything normal. Too normal. Then the playback came through, a short burst of static, and then my voice, clear, calm. "Unit 12, respond immediately." I felt a cold shift in my chest. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. Same tone, same pacing. Even the slight flattening on certain words I'd noticed in recordings of myself before. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The playback continued. "Unit 12, I need you to respond now." There was a pause. Then something I didn't remember hearing before. "Before you see it." The transmission cut out. I stared straight ahead, my focus narrowing without me realizing it. "Dispatch," I said quietly. That last part, was that in the original transmission? Silence. Then, "Negative." My hands felt steady on the wheel, but there was a disconnect now, like I was moving through something slightly out of sync. "I'm going to pull over," I said. "Copy." I eased the cruiser onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. The headlights stretched out across the road, illuminating the empty lane ahead. I put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, listening. Nothing. No wind, no distant traffic, just the low idle of the engine and the faint hiss of the radio. I told myself to think. If it was interference, it would stop. If it was someone else, they'd respond. But deep down, there was another thought pushing in. If it's coming from your unit, then where is it being sent from? I reached for the dash cam controls. If something was transmitting, maybe it would have picked it up. I scrolled back through the recent footage, stopping at the timestamp from the first call. The video showed exactly what I expected. Empty road, steady headlights, no movement. Then the audio played. My voice came through the speakers. Same as before. But this time I noticed something else. A faint background noise. Not static, something rhythmic, soft. I leaned closer, turning up the volume. It took a second to recognize it. Turn signal, click, pause, click. I froze. Because my turn signal wasn't on, I glanced at the dashboard to confirm. Nothing. I looked back at the screen. The sound continued in the recording. Click, pause, click. And then I saw it, at the very edge of the frame, behind my cruiser. A faint reflection. 2 points of light. Headlights. I don't remember seeing them at the time, but they were there, following at a distance, perfectly aligned with my lane. The video continued. The headlights stayed consistent, never getting closer, never falling back. Just there. Then the second transmission played. Before you see it, the headlights in the video disappeared. Not faded, not turned, just gone. I sat back slowly, my eyes shifting to the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. But for a second, just a second, I thought I could still hear it. That soft, steady rhythm. Click, pause, click. I didn't stay there long. I put the car back in drive and pulled onto the road, picking up speed without really thinking about it. The rest of the shift passed without anything else happening. No more transmissions, no strange vehicles, nothing. Later, they checked the logs again. Every transmission had come from my unit ID, time-stamped accurately. No sign of interference, no duplicate signal, nothing. They even inspected the radio equipment. No faults, no malfunctions, everything working exactly as it should. I requested a copy of the audio afterward. I don't know why. Maybe I thought listening to it again would make it feel less personal. It didn't. Because there was one detail I hadn't noticed that night. Something small, easy to miss. In the second recording, right before the final line, you can hear me breathing. Not the way I normally do. Slower, measured, like I was trying to stay quiet, like I was already aware of something behind me. I still use the same unit, same radio, same routes. But sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet, I catch myself checking the mic, making sure I didn't press it without realizing. And every now and then, I think about that last line, not the one I heard, the one that came after, because whatever sent that message, it wasn't trying to warn me, it was telling me I was about to notice it.